I picked up my daughter-in-law's coat from the dry cleaners and Mr. Chen, the owner I'd known for years, grabbed my arm and pulled me into the corner. "Mrs. Patterson," he whispered, pressing a small plastic bag into my hand, "you need to get those children out of town. Today." At that moment, I had no idea I was uncovering a horrifying plan that would shatter our family forever. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love knowing how far our stories reach. The December heat clung to my skin as I walked down Main Street in Gilbert. I was loaded down with shopping bags, sweat trickling down my back despite the Arizona winter. Chen's Cleaners appeared on the corner, its faded sign swaying in the dry wind. I pulled out the yellowed ticket my daughter-in-law Rachel had handed me earlier that morning. "Mom, can you grab my beige coat from the cleaners? I've got back-to-back meetings all day," she'd asked with that hurried smile, fixing her hair in the hallway mirror. I had agreed without thinking twice. Just another favor for my son's wife. The bell chimed when I entered. The smell of fabric softener and hot steam filled my lungs. Mr. Chen stood behind the counter, a 70-year-old man with glasses perched on his nose and hands weathered by decades of work. I handed him the ticket. "Ah, Mrs. Patterson," he murmured, glancing at the slip. "Let me get that for you." While I waited, I checked the wall clock. Already past 5. I needed to get home soon to make dinner for my grandkids. Tyler, 7, and Emma, 5. My son Andrew worked late hours, and Rachel always had commitments I never quite understood. Mr. Chen returned with the coat carefully wrapped in clear plastic, but instead of handing it to me, he looked around, making sure we were alone. His wrinkled face hardened. "Mrs. Patterson," he spoke barely above a whisper, "I need to show you something." Before I could respond, he gripped my arm with his bony hand and led me behind a curtain that separated the shop from the washing area. The sound of the machines muffled our conversation. "I found this when I was checking the pockets," he said, pulling a small plastic bag from a drawer. My heart started racing when I saw the contents. It was a photograph of my grandchildren playing in our backyard. But what froze my blood were the marks, crude red circles drawn around their faces like they'd been marked with rage. Next to the photo was a bank transfer receipt with an amount that made my eyes widen, hundreds of thousands of dollars. "When I saw this, I couldn't believe it," he continued, his voice shaking. "I've known you for years, Mrs. Patterson. I couldn't just hand back the coat like nothing happened." I took the plastic bag, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped it. "Mrs. Patterson, you need to take those children far away from here," he said, his eyes filled with genuine fear. "I'm not joking. This kind of marking, it's not good. I've seen news reports about this." "What does it mean?" I asked, barely able to form the words. "I can't say for certain, but those red circles, I've seen stories. It has to do with human trafficking." The air became too thick to breathe. Human trafficking? My grandchildren? The room seemed to spin around me. "Don't waste time. Take those kids and leave the city before sunrise. Don't tell anyone, not even your son. We don't know who's involved." I left the dry cleaners in shock, the shopping bags now weighing a ton, Rachel's coat draped over my arm, and the plastic bag burning in my pocket like fire. The street looked the same, cars passing, people heading home from work, the sun beginning to set. But my world had collapsed. I arrived home with my heart pounding. Tyler and Emma were in the living room watching cartoons. When they saw me, they ran to hug me. "Grandma, did you bring chocolate?" Emma asked, her big innocent eyes shining up at me. I looked at those small faces, the same faces someone had marked with red circles. I forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Let's put away the groceries, then you can have some." My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Running late. Emergency meeting. XOS. I stared at the message, then at the photo in the plastic bag. The woman I'd treated like a daughter for 7 years. The woman who claimed to love my son. The woman who had given birth to these 2 innocent children. How could she be part of something so terrible? While I prepared dinner, my mind worked frantically. I didn't have a car. I didn't have much money saved. Where would I go with 2 children in the middle of the night? Who would believe me? If I told Andrew, he'd confront Rachel, and if she was involved with dangerous people? I served the kids spaghetti, pretending everything was normal, but inside, every nerve in my body screamed to run. "Grandma, why are you shaking?" Tyler asked, watching my hands as I poured the juice. "Just tired, honey." After dinner, while the kids bathed, I called my childhood friend, Betty, who'd moved to Albuquerque a few years ago. "I need your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's an emergency. Can I stay at your house for a few days with my grandkids?" Betty didn't ask many questions. She just said, "Yes. 50-year friendships have that privilege. Trust without interrogation." Then I called an Uber, scheduling a pickup for 4 in the morning. At midnight, with the children asleep, I began packing a small bag. Some clothes, toothbrushes, Tyler's allergy medication, Emma's favorite doll. My brain felt numb, running on autopilot. I grabbed my phone and photographed the contents of the plastic bag. It was the only proof I had, just in case something went wrong. Andrew called around 1 in the morning.
"Mom, I'm sleeping at the office. We've got a major client presentation tomorrow. How are the kids?" I bit my lip to keep from crying. My son, always working, always trusting that Rachel and I would handle everything, completely unaware of the danger. "They're fine, honey, sleeping. Has Rachel come home yet?" "No, she texted saying she'd be late." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Again," he said, and I could feel his frustration. These meetings of hers are getting more and more frequent. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the children sleep. In the darkness, I could only see the outlines of their small bodies under the blankets, so vulnerable, so trusting that the adults around them would keep them safe. 15 minutes before 4, I gently woke them. "We're going on a surprise trip, sweethearts," I whispered, helping them put coats over their pajamas. "Now, Grandma?" Tyler asked, rubbing his eyes. "It's nighttime." "Yes, honey. It's a special adventure. We're going to visit Aunt Betty in Albuquerque." "What about Mommy?" Emma asked, her voice sleepy. She knows we're going. She'll catch up with us later." Another lie. How many more would I have to tell? The Uber arrived right on time. I buckled the kids into the back seat, loaded the small suitcase in the trunk. Just as we were about to pull away, I saw Rachel's car turning onto our street. "Go, please, now," I told the driver. As the car accelerated down the dark street, I looked back. Rachel's car was parking in front of the house. She'd go inside, find the house empty, and then what? Would she call the police, Andrew, or her mysterious accomplices? The drive to Albuquerque felt endless. Emma fell back asleep in my lap, but Tyler stayed awake, staring out the window at the highway lights and passing trucks. "Grandma," he said quietly, "we're running away, aren't we?" I looked at him, surprised. Kids notice more than we think. "Why do you say that, honey?" "Because you're scared. I can see it in your eyes." I hugged him tighter. "We're just going to visit Aunt Betty. It'll be fun, you'll see." But as the car cut through the night carrying the last 3 members of my family I still trusted, I knew we really were running from a betrayal so deep I could barely comprehend it, running to protect what mattered most. And it all started with a coat at the dry cleaners. We arrived at Betty's house as the sun was beginning to rise. She waited for us on the porch in an old bathrobe over her nightgown, her gray hair disheveled. When the Uber pulled away, she hugged me without saying a word. just squeezing my shoulders hard. The kind of hug that says, "I'm here for you." Her house was simple but cozy, an old two-story with a backyard and a kitchen that smelled like coffee and homemade bread. She led the drowsy children to the guest room while I collapsed into a kitchen chair, exhausted. "Now tell me what happened," she said, setting a cup of strong coffee in front of me. "You don't flee in the middle of the night without a damn good reason." With trembling hands, I showed her the photo I had taken of the plastic bag's contents. Her eyes went wide. "Oh my God, Margaret, is that—" "Yes," I interrupted. "I found it in Rachel's coat. The dry cleaner showed it to me. He said I have to protect the kids." Betty sat down heavily across from me. "Do you think Rachel's involved? Maybe someone planted it in her coat without her knowing." I shook my head. "There's a transfer for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and she's been acting strange, going out a lot, taking mysterious calls, always with excuses about meetings." My phone vibrated. It was a call from Andrew. I looked at Betty in panic. "Answer it," she said. "Act normal. Don't say where you are." I took a deep breath and answered. "Mom?" "Mom!" Andrew's voice was loaded with desperation. "Where are you? I came home and nobody's here. Rachel says you disappeared with the kids." "Andrew, calm down." I tried to keep my voice steady. "The kids are fine. We're safe." "Safe? What are you talking about? Rachel's frantic. She's already called the police." My heart sank. The police. Of course she'd involve the authorities quickly. Grandmother kidnaps her own children. The perfect story to paint me as the villain. "Andrew, please listen to me. I discovered something terrible. I can't explain over the phone. Your phones might be monitored." "Andrew, you're scaring me. What are you talking about? Rachel thinks you've had some kind of episode." The insinuation was clear. My daughter-in-law was suggesting I'd had a mental breakdown. Rage rose in my chest. "Son, I'm perfectly lucid. I need you to come meet me, alone, without Rachel knowing. It's about the children. It's serious." There was a long silence. "Where are you?" he finally asked, his voice lower. "I can't say over the phone. I'll text you an address for a public place to meet. Come alone, Andrew. Your children's lives depend on it." I hung up, trembling. Betty squeezed my hand. "Do you really think the phones are tapped?" "I don't know, but I can't risk it. If Rachel's involved with dangerous people." Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Grandma, I'm hungry." I forced a smile. "Let's make a really good breakfast, sweetheart." While Betty prepared pancakes for the kids, I texted Andrew, arranging to meet at a shopping mall in Albuquerque, the food court, at 2 in the afternoon. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I tried to act normal with the children, who were delighted with Betty's backyard and the fat orange cat that lived there. But every noise startled me. Every car passing on the street made me run to the window. At 1:30 in the afternoon, I left the kids with Betty and took a bus to the mall. I chose a strategic spot in the food court where I could see all the entrances. I ordered coffee I couldn't drink. My stomach was in knots. I saw Andrew arrive 15 minutes early. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him just 2 days ago. Deep circles under his eyes, unshaven stubble, shoulders hunched under the weight of worry. He spotted me and walked quickly in my direction. I stood up, ready for a hug, but instead he grabbed my arms tightly. "Mom, what did you do? Where are my kids?" "They're safe," I replied, keeping my voice low. "Sit down. I need to show you something." He sat down reluctantly. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo I had taken. "I found this in Rachel's coat. The dry cleaner gave it to me yesterday." He took the phone, staring at the image. I watched his face change from anger to confusion, then to an expression I couldn't read. "What are those circles?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "According to Mr. Chen, it's a marking used by human traffickers. Andrew, I think Rachel is planning to sell the children." He shook his head vehemently. No, that's insane. There must be some explanation. Rachel would never. She loves her kids. Look at the amount of the transfer. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And how long has she been acting strange? Late night meetings, business trips, always on the phone with people you don't know? I saw doubt growing in his eyes. Andrew worked so much, trusted so blindly, that he never questioned his wife's increasingly frequent absences. Even if that were true, he stammered, why did you run? Why didn't you come to me first? Mr. Chen told me not to trust anyone. We don't know who's involved, Andrew. If Rachel's part of a larger network... Andrew ran his hands over his face, trying to process what he was hearing. I need to see my kids, he said finally. I need to make sure they're okay. There are. But before I take you to them, we need to decide what to do. If you confront Rachel, she'll deny everything. She might even convince you I'm the one who's lost it. We need more concrete proof. What proof? This could be anything, he said, pointing at the photo on the phone. Someone could have planted it. It could be a misunderstanding. I'd expected this resistance. Nobody wants to believe the person they chose to share their life with is capable of such betrayal. Andrew, have you ever suspected anything? Never noticed something strange? He was silent for a long moment. There was a safe, he said finally, in our bedroom closet. Rachel said it was for storing jewelry, but I never had the combination. And lately I've seen weird movements in our joint account, large sums being transferred. My heart accelerated. We need to see what's in that safe. Mom, that's invasion of privacy. We can't just... I interrupted, more harshly than I intended. We're talking about your children's safety. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize to Rachel on my knees. But what if I'm right? Could you live knowing you had the chance to save them and did nothing? I saw the internal struggle in his eyes, love for his wife against concern for his children. Finally, he nodded. Rachel's at the police station right now giving a statement about the kidnapping. The house is empty. Then let's go, now. We left the mall and caught an Uber. During the entire drive back to Gilbert, we stayed silent. Andrew stared out the window, lost in thought. I prayed silently that I was wrong, that there'd be some innocent explanation for everything. But deep down, I knew those red circles were a death sentence for my grandchildren, and I'd do anything to save them. The Uber dropped us 2 blocks from Andrew's house for a precaution.
I looked around for some clue. On Rachel's dresser was a picture frame with a photo of her and a man who wasn't Andrew. They were smiling, standing too close to be just friends. "Who's this?" I asked, showing him the photo. Andrew frowned. "Brandon, a colleague from her work. Why?" I turned the frame over. There was a date written by hand on the back, 08-15. "Try this date," I suggested, handing him the photo. His eyes widened when he saw the notation. With hesitant fingers, he typed 08-15. A metallic click. The safe opened. Inside were several stacks of cash in different currencies. Passports. Not just for Rachel, but also for Tyler and Emma with fake names. An envelope contained 3 plane tickets to Malaysia, only for Rachel and the children. Andrew's name was nowhere. But what made me freeze was a folder. Andrew opened it, and there were more photos of Tyler and Emma. All of them had those red circles around their faces. Next to them was a document that looked like a contract with astronomical values and terms that turned my stomach. "Oh my God," Andrew whispered, falling to his knees. She was going to sell them. I touched his shoulder, wordless to console him. How do you console a son who's just discovered the mother of his children planned to sell them? Suddenly, we heard the sound of a car parking in front of the house. We ran to the window. It was Rachel getting out of a car I didn't recognize. Beside her, a tall man in a dark suit. "It's him," Andrew said, his voice strangled. "Brandon." Quickly, Andrew photographed the contents of the safe with his phone. We took some of the most incriminating documents and closed the safe, leaving everything as it was. "Let's go out the back," I whispered. We descended the stairs silently.
Through the kitchen window, I saw Rachel and Brandon entering through the front door. They were arguing, their voices tense. "We have to find them," Rachel was saying. "The transfer's already been made. If we don't deliver the kids in 2 days, we're dead." "Calm down," Brandon responded. "We'll find them. Your mother-in-law can't have gone far with 2 kids." Andrew squeezed my arm so hard I almost cried out in pain. His face was pale, lips trembling. For the first time in my life, I saw my son completely shattered. We slipped out the back door, hidden by the hedge. We walked quickly until we reached a busy avenue where we caught another Uber back to Albuquerque. On the way, Andrew remained silent, staring at the photos on his phone as if he still couldn't believe it. Finally, he spoke. "We need to go to the police." "We can't just walk into any police station," I argued. "If Rachel's part of a larger network, we don't know who might be involved. We need someone we can trust." Andrew nodded, running his hands over his face. "I have a friend from college who's a detective in Albuquerque, Marcus. I'll call him." The call was brief. Andrew didn't go into details, just said it was a family emergency and he needed Marcus's help. We arrived in Albuquerque 2 hours later. Instead of going back to Betty's house, we went directly to a small cafe downtown. Marcus was already waiting there, a sturdy man with graying beard and attentive eyes. "Andrew," he said, embracing my son. "It's been years." "Thanks for coming," Andrew replied, his voice exhausted. We sat at a secluded table. Andrew showed the photos of the safe's contents and told the whole story. Marcus listened carefully, his face hardening with each word. "Those red circles," he said finally, "are a known marking of an international human trafficking ring. We've been investigating this group for years, but they're elusive. We rarely get concrete evidence." "What now?" I asked, feeling cold in my stomach. "Now we need to act with extreme caution," Marcus responded. "If what you're saying is true, Rachel and this Brandon are just pawns in a much larger operation. We need to set up a sting to catch them and hopefully reach the higher-ups." "What about the kids?" Andrew asked, his voice breaking. "They need to stay hidden until we resolve this. They can't go home or stay anywhere obvious." I told Marcus about Betty, and he agreed that for now it was the safest place for Tyler and Emma, but he suggested an additional precaution. "I'll assign an undercover officer to be near the house, just as a safeguard." We left the cafe with a plan. Marcus would activate a small team he trusted to investigate Rachel and Brandon discreetly. Andrew would stay with me and the kids at Betty's house. And I would have to keep being strong for all of us. When we got back to Betty's, Tyler and Emma ran to hug their father. Seeing them together, Andrew embracing his children desperately as if afraid they'd disappear at any moment, broke my heart. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Emma asked, touching Andrew's face with her small hand. "Because I'm so happy to see you," he answered, forcing a smile. That night, after the children finally fell asleep, Andrew, Betty, and I sat in the kitchen. The full reality of the situation finally crashed down on us. "How did I not notice?" Andrew murmured, his hands clutching a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. All the signs were there. The sudden trips, the secret calls, the unexplained money. How was I so blind? "You loved her," I responded simply. "Love sometimes blinds us." Betty put more water on to boil. "The important thing is you discovered it in time," she said. "Now you need to be strong for the children." Andrew nodded, but I saw in his eyes a pain so deep, I doubted it would ever fully heal. It wasn't just Rachel's betrayal, it was the unimaginable horror of knowing the mother of his children was willing to sell them. That night, lying on the makeshift bed in Betty's living room, I couldn't sleep. I relived moments with Rachel over the years. Family lunches, the kids' birthdays, confidences exchanged. Had it all been a lie? Or at some point had she changed, seduced by promises of wealth and a different life? And how would we explain this to the children when they were older? How do you tell Tyler and Emma that their mother had betrayed them in the worst possible way? Through the window, I saw the dim light of a patrol car parked discreetly on the corner. The officer Marcus had assigned to protect us. I felt a stab of gratitude amid the despair. At least we weren't alone in this fight anymore. Finally, I fell asleep exhausted, only to be awakened by the sound of my phone. It was an unknown number. Heart racing, I answered the call. "Hello?" I whispered, trying not to wake the others. "Margaret?" Rachel's voice was cold, controlled. I know you have my kids. I froze, unable to respond. How did you get my number? I'd changed my SIM card. There's no point pretending. I'm calling to propose a deal. What kind of deal? I asked, moving silently to the porch so I wouldn't be overheard. Bring me the kids tomorrow. No police, no Andrew. Just you and them. In exchange, I guarantee nothing will happen to you. I felt my blood turn to ice. And if I don't accept? There was a brief pause. Then I can't guarantee anyone's safety. Not yours, not Andrew's, not even the children's. There are very powerful people involved in this, Margaret. People who don't tolerate interference. I tried to keep my voice steady. How do I know you won't kill us as soon as I hand the kids? Rachel laughed, a hollow sound that made my skin crawl. You really think I want to kill my own children? They're too valuable for that. Valuable as merchandise, I responded bitterly. Business is business, Margaret. I have a debt to pay, and this is the only way. Central Plaza, Albuquerque, tomorrow at noon. Come alone with Tyler and Emma. The call ended. I stood there trembling on the dark porch. The officer in the patrol car must have noticed my silhouette because she briefly flashed her lights, a silent signal that she was watching. I went back inside and awoke Andrew. He listened to my account of the call, his face pale. I'm calling Marcus immediately, he said. Marcus appeared at Betty's house less than an hour later, accompanied by 2 other undercover officers. We all sat in the kitchen while the children slept, unaware of the danger hanging over us. This could actually be good, Marcus said thoughtfully. We can use this meeting to trap them. It's too risky, I protested. What if something goes wrong? What if the children get hurt? We won't bring the real children, Marcus explained. We'll set up a trap. You'll go to the agreed location, but with undercover officers disguised as the kids. We'll have teams positioned throughout the plaza. Andrew ran his hands through his hair nervously. What if they figure it out? That's why we need to be extremely careful in the planning, Marcus said. We need to make it look convincing enough that they'll approach, but guarantee your safety. We discussed the details until dawn. The plan was risky, but it was our best chance to capture Rachel and her accomplices. I would be the bait, pretending I had brought the kids as demanded. When the sun finally rose, I was exhausted but determined. While Marcus and his colleagues left to organize the operation, I went to check on Tyler and Emma, who were beginning to wake. Good morning, Grandma, Tyler murmured sleepily. Are we going home today? I sat on the edge of the bed and stroked his hair. Not yet, sweetie. We'll stay a few more days with Aunt Betty. But I want my other toys, Emma complained, hugging her doll. Soon, sweetheart, soon. Andrew entered the room, forcing a smile for his children. His eyes met mine over the kids' heads, a look of determination mixed with terror. The day passed slowly. Betty kept the kids entertained with games and stories, while Andrew and I received final instructions from Marcus by phone. At 11 in the morning, it was time for me to get ready. I dressed as I would normally do to go out with my grandkids. Jeans, simple blouse, hair pulled back. Marcus had given me a small listening device hidden as a button on my blouse. Before leaving, I hugged Tyler and Emma tighter than ever. Grandma is going to take care of some things and we'll be back soon, I promised, swallowing my tears. Be good for Daddy and Aunt Biddy. In the unmarked police car heading to the Central Plaza, I felt the weight of everything at stake. 2 young officers disguised as Tyler and Emma sat beside me, dressed exactly as...
Her words sent a chill down my spine. Even with Rachel and Brandon arrested, the threat wasn't over. There were others involved, people more powerful and more dangerous. Marcus approached me while the other officers loaded Rachel and Brandon into patrol cars. You were very brave, he said, squeezing my shoulder. We did it. Now we can follow their trail to the top of the operation. What about my family? I asked, still trembling. Are we safe? We'll keep you under protection until we're certain everyone involved has been captured, he assured me. But you can't go home yet. I'll arrange a safe house. At the station, I reunited with Andrew. He hugged me tightly, tears streaming down his face. It's over, Mom. You saved my kids. But as we waited to give our statements, watching Rachel and Brandon being interrogated in separate rooms, I knew it wasn't over.
It was just the beginning of a long fight for justice, and more importantly, for the safety and future of Tyler and Emma. 3 months passed since that day at the plaza. We were living temporarily in a safe house provided by the Witness Protection Program in a small town outside Santa Fe. Tyler and Emma were enrolled in the local school under different names, and Andrew got a remote job to support the family. The investigations continued. Through Rachel and Brandon, police managed to unravel a significant part of the trafficking network that operated not just in the Southwest, but across several states. Multiple suspects were arrested, including an influential businessman who financed the operation. Rachel refused to cooperate fully. The 2 times I was called to confront her, she looked at me with hatred so intense I felt like it could burn my skin. She claimed she'd been forced to participate in the scheme because of debts, but the evidence showed years of conscious participation. Brandon, on the other hand, broke under pressure and was giving up everyone involved in exchange for a reduced sentence. It was through him we discovered the true extent of the horror. Dozens of children had already been trafficked by the group, sold for illegal adoptions or even darker fates. Andrew was devastated. In the first days after the arrests, he could barely get out of bed. How do you keep living when the person you loved, the mother of your children, turned out to be a monster? But little by little, he was finding strength to move forward, mainly for Tyler and Emma. The children still didn't know the whole truth. How do you explain to kids so young that their mother planned to sell them? For now, we just told them Rachel did something bad and had to go away. They asked about her occasionally, especially Emma, who still cried at night calling for her mommy. "When's Mommy coming back?" she asked me yesterday while I tucked her in. "I don't know, sweetheart," I replied honestly, stroking her hair. "But Grandma and Daddy are here, and we love you more than anything in the world." Today is Sunday, and we're trying to establish new routines, create a new normal. Andrew is in the backyard with Tyler, teaching him to ride a bike without training wheels. Emma is beside me in the kitchen, helping make a chocolate cake, which mostly means licking the spoon of raw batter. I look at my granddaughter, the chocolate smudge on her cheek, her small fingers kneading the dough, and I feel an overwhelming wave of love and protection. I think about what could have happened if I hadn't gone to that dry cleaner's that day, if Mr. Chen hadn't noticed the suspicious contents in Rachel's coat. Sometimes fate works through the smallest details. A forgotten coat, an old dry cleaner's, an honest man who refused to stay silent. Small decisions that changed everything. The prosecutor on the case told us Rachel and Brandon would likely receive severe sentences. The evidence was overwhelming, and the case gained national attention, increasing pressure for justice. But he also warned us the trial would be difficult, especially for Andrew, who'd have to publicly face his wife's betrayal. Marcus, Andrew's detective friend, continues to visit us regularly, both professionally and to give us support. He was the one who told me something I can't forget. "Mrs. Patterson, you did what many wouldn't have the courage to do, face a horrible truth when it would have been easier to ignore it." I don't feel brave. I just did what any grandmother would do to protect her grandchildren. But I learned that sometimes courage isn't one grand heroic gesture. It's a series of small, difficult steps taken when all you want to do is run away. Tonight, when Andrew and I sat on the porch after the kids fell asleep, looking at stars that seem so bright in this small town, he took my hand. "Thank you, Mom," he said simply, "for saving my children when I was too blind to see the danger." I squeezed his hand. We're a family. We protect each other. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know how long we'll have to live in this limbo, away from our home, our friends, our previous life. We don't know how the children will react when they're old enough to understand the whole truth. But I know that no matter how dark the night, the sun always rises again. And as long as we're together, Andrew, Tyler, Emma, and me, we'll find our way back to the light. This morning, while organizing the borrowed dresser in the temporary room, I found the yellow dry cleaner's ticket still in the pocket of the blouse I wore that fateful day. A simple piece of paper that changed our lives forever. I kept it as a reminder, not of Rachel's betrayal, but of Mr. Chen's courage, of our own resilience, and the fact that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to an opportunity to start over. Because that's what we're doing now, starting over, one day at a time, one laugh at a time, one new memory at a time. And in the end, that's all we can do. Keep moving forward, protect those we love, and believe that better days are coming. 6 months later, trial. Rachel and Brandon's trial began exactly 6 months after their arrest. The case had gained national attention, and the courtroom was packed with journalists, human rights activists, and outraged citizens. Andrew and I sat together in the first row, gripping each other's hands for strength. Thanks to Marcus's efforts, the children didn't have to attend, spared the trauma of seeing their mother handcuffed in the defendant's box. When Rachel entered, escorted by 2 guards, I almost didn't recognize her. Time in prison had erased all the polish she once displayed. Her always immaculate hair now hung limp. Her once radiant face was now marked by deep circles. But her eyes, when they found mine, still burned with that same hatred. The prosecutor presented the case with relentless precision, laying out every horrifying detail of the scheme. The photos of my grandchildren with the red circles were projected on a large screen, making the entire courtroom gasp in horror. Bank statements showing the massive transfers, the purchased tickets, the fake passports. Then came the testimonies. Brandon, seeking a reduced sentence, confessed everything, completely implicating Rachel. He described how she'd initially been recruited as a money launderer for the organization, but soon realized she could profit much more by offering her own children. She said it was perfect, he testified, avoiding looking at Rachel. No one would suspect a mother. When my turn came to testify, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I told about the coat, about the discoveries at the dry cleaners, about our desperate flight to protect the children. My voice failed several times, but I managed to finish. Rachel chose not to testify, following her lawyer's advice. But during the prosecution's closing argument, she turned and looked directly at me and Andrew. Her lips formed silent words that seemed to be, "This isn't over."
A week after the trial, we received news that we could finally leave the Witness Protection Program. With the main members of the network imprisoned and the case closed, the immediate danger had passed. It was time to rebuild our lives. Andrew decided we needed a completely fresh start. He sold the house where he'd lived with Rachel and bought a small ranch-style home on the outskirts of Flagstaff, a quiet town where nobody knew us, where we wouldn't be the family from that terrible trafficking case. The move happened quickly. Within a month, we were settled in our new home. The house wasn't large, but it had a spacious yard where Tyler could play soccer and Emma could play with her dolls. There was a small garden in the back with apple and peach trees, promising fruit in the next season. Andrew found work with a local company, and I began helping at my grandkids' school, working as a librarian assistant. Slowly, we began to know our neighbors, make new friends, establish new routines. The children adapted with the surprising resilience of youth. Tyler joined the school soccer team and was soon chattering about new friends. Emma, always more reserved, took a bit longer, but eventually grew attached to her teacher and began bringing home colorful drawings every day. They still asked about their mother occasionally, but less frequently. One night, when Andrew was tucking Tyler in, the boy asked directly, "Dad, Mom did something really bad, didn't she?" Andrew told me about the conversation later, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know what to say, Mom," he confessed. "How do I explain that to an 8-year-old?" "In time," I replied, hugging him. "We'll explain in time, when they can understand." A year passed, then 2. Life moved on. We celebrated birthdays, Christmases, school graduations. Andrew met a music teacher at the kids' school, Sarah, a gentle, patient woman who entered our lives with respect and no rush. At first, I was apprehensive. How could we trust again? How could we be sure we weren't bringing another danger into our lives? But Sarah proved to be exactly what she seemed, a genuinely good person who loved my son and grandchildren for who they were, with all the scars and baggage they carried. In our 3rd year in Flagstaff, Andrew and Sarah got married in a simple ceremony in our backyard garden. Tyler, now 10, was the proud ring bearer in his first suit. Emma, 8, threw flower petals down the improvised aisle, her pink dress twirling as she spun around. Watching my son smile again, seeing my grandchildren embrace Sarah with genuine affection, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. Maybe we'd finally found our happy ending. Then the letter arrived. It came in a plain envelope, no return address, addressed to me. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "She's getting out soon. She never forgot what you did. Be ready." My blood froze. Rachel couldn't be getting out. Her sentence was 30 years and only 3 had passed. But what if there'd been a successful appeal? What if she'd made some kind of deal? I didn't show the letter to Andrew. He was finally happy, finally moving on. How could I drag him back into that nightmare? Instead, I called Marcus, who had stayed in touch over the years. "It's not possible," he assured me after hearing about the letter. "Rachel is still serving her sentence in maximum security. This is probably just an attempt to scare you." "But how did someone find our address?" I asked, fear evident in my voice. "We were so careful." "I'll investigate," he promised. "Meanwhile, increase security, install cameras, alarms, and keep me informed if you receive anything else." In the following days, we lived in constant alert. Andrew noticed my worry and insisted until I showed him the letter. His face went pale, and he immediately began taking measures. He installed a complete security system, put new locks on all doors and windows. He even bought a large dog, a German shepherd named Max, who quickly became Tyler's best friend. 2 more weeks passed without incident. I began to wonder if Marcus was right, if the letter was just an empty attempt to frighten us, maybe from some sympathizer of Rachel or Brandon who'd discovered our whereabouts. Then, one Saturday morning, while I was preparing breakfast and the kids were still asleep, the doorbell rang. Andrew and Sarah had gone out for a run like they did every morning. I looked through the peephole, but saw no one. Cautiously, I opened the door. Nobody was there, just a small box on the ground. My instinct told me not to touch it, to call the police immediately. But before I could close the door, Max pushed past me and began sniffing the box, wagging his tail happily. I picked it up carefully and carried it to the kitchen. Inside, I found 2 small rag dolls that looked strangely like Tyler and Emma. Both had red circles drawn around their faces and pins stuck in their chests. I dropped the box, horrified. I ran to check on the children who were still sleeping peacefully. Then with trembling hands, I called Marcus. Within an hour, police were at our house. Marcus arrived shortly after, having driven over 200 miles as soon as he received my call. "This is no joke,"
he said gravely, examining the dolls. "We're going to reinforce your security and investigate thoroughly." Andrew and Sarah returned to find the house full of police. When I explained what had happened, Andrew made an immediate decision. "We need to leave here, now." There was no arguing. Within hours, we'd packed the essentials and left the house that had been our home for the past 3 years. Marcus took us to a secure police facility while the investigation continued. We spent a week in that sterile place, the children confused and frightened, Andrew and Sarah trying to keep calm for them. I blamed myself constantly. Maybe if I hadn't gone to that dry cleaners, if I hadn't discovered Rachel's plan, we'd all be living in ignorance. Tyler and Emma would have been taken, yes, but the rest of us would be safe in our delusion. Terrible, selfish thoughts that I pushed away as soon as they arose. No, discovering the truth was the only right thing to do, even with all the suffering that came after. We saved 2 innocent lives. On the 8th day of our stay at the secure facility, Marcus entered with an expression I couldn't decipher. "We found who sent the dolls," he said, "and it wasn't Rachel." "Then who?" Andrew asked, gripping Sarah's hand tightly. "A woman named Monica Silva, Brandon's sister. She was trying to scare you as revenge for her brother. There's no real connection to Rachel, no actual plan to hurt you." I felt relief so intense my legs buckled and I had to sit down. "So, it's really over this time?" I asked. Marcus nodded, a small smile finally appearing on his tired face. "It's over. Monica was arrested for threats and stalking. Rachel remains in prison with no communication with the outside world." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. When I woke, I found Tyler and Emma playing happily in the small courtyard of the facility, as if the whole nightmare had never happened. "What now?" I asked Andrew as we watched the kids. He said, "Home. We're going home." But Sarah, who'd stood firm by our side through the entire crisis, suggested something unexpected. "My family has a house on the Oregon coast. It's been empty for years. We could move there. At least temporarily." And so, once again, we packed up our lives and set out for a new destination. The house on the coast was older and smaller than our home in Flagstaff, but it had something we all desperately needed: peace. Located in a small fishing community near Cannon Beach, far from big cities and hustle, the house was just steps from the ocean. For the first time in years, we didn't need to constantly look over our shoulders. The children could run freely on the sand, and the sound of waves gradually washed the fear from our minds. Tyler and Emma were enrolled in the local school and quickly made new friends. Andrew managed to transfer his work to remote. Sarah began giving music lessons in the community. And I finally had time to breathe, to process everything we'd been through. One quiet afternoon, I sat on the porch looking at the ocean and began writing our story. Not to publish or share, but as a form of therapy, to accept what happened and move forward. And maybe one day, when Tyler and Emma were adults and ready to understand the full truth, I could give them this record. Today, as I write these final pages, I look back and see how far we've come. The children are thriving. Tyler, now 12, is captain of the school soccer team. Emma, 10, discovered a talent for painting and has her art hanging throughout the house. Andrew and Sarah are talking about having a baby, expanding our family that's already been so brutally threatened. And me? I learned that life can deal us terrible blows, but it can also offer us extraordinary second chances.